So, for today's lesson, the aim is what can different historical theories teach us about social studies? What is the aim for today's lesson? So, in this video, we are going to compare and contrast the great man theory of history and the social theory of history. As you guys probably remember, we looked at the difference between a historical narrative and a historical theory over the past few days. A historical theory is an idea that explains how or why something happened in the past. Today we are going to look at two historical theories. One is an older theory called the great man theory, and we're going to look at that one first. So the great man theory of history was most popular in the 1800s and the early 1900s, but some people still like it today. Once again, the great man theory of history was most popular in the late 18 and early 1900s. When was the great man theory of history most popular? So, the great man theory of history states that important people like kings and presidents make things happen, so historians should study the actions of great people to understand history. According to the great man theory of history, and remember, this is an idea, it doesn't have to be true, but it's somebody's idea, so it's worth us thinking about. Who should historians study if they want to understand history? So there are some advantages to the great man theory. Because again, it's a theory, it's just a tool we use, so there'll be some advantages and some disadvantages. Advantages include that it lets historians see how the actions of leaders change history. And focusing on important people can lead to dramatic narratives. So looking at leaders lets us see how those leaders change history. And when you're telling the story of history, when you focus on the leaders, on the famous people who like fight battles and win elections and do all these exciting things, it can be very exciting and dramatic. So those are the advantages of the great man theory. Before we move on, I'm going to have two questions. First question, what is one advantage of the great man theory of history? And this is the second question before we move on. Can you guess a disadvantage? Who do you think is going to get left out when we use this theory? Who are we not looking at? So it's okay if you guessed something else, but one big disadvantage that I see with this theory is that it ignores the lives of regular people. Why do you think it might be a problem for a theory about history to ignore regular people? All right. So as the great man theory of history got older, some people started to say, you know what? We need a new theory. We need a new idea about history. And again, it's not that one of these is wrong and the other one is better. Just which one is in style comes and goes. The same way clothing comes and goes in and out of style, theories about history come and go in and out of style. So as people moved away from the great man theory as it went out of style, people started to look at the social theory of history. Thinking back to that first lesson we did, what does social mean? So, yes, social is whenever people do things and interact with each other. And the social theory of history believes that looking at how regular people interact can teach us about history. So, the social theory of history believes that changes to the everyday life and beliefs of regular people drives history forwards. So the social theory says leaders are important, but the people who really make things happen are when regular people change their mind about when they believe something. So, like, Martin Luther King was important on fighting for civil rights, but the thing that really made it happen was when regular Americans changed their beliefs about equality to say that, oh no, people should be equal regardless of race. The person who uses the social theory of history would say, ah, yes, the leader was important. Dr. King was important, but just as important was all the regular people who changed their minds, and that's what really changed history, was the regular people changing their minds. So, who does the social theory of history focus on? The same way there's advantages to the great man theory, there's advantages to the social theory of history. The biggest advantage is it lets historians see what life was like for regular people. And the biggest disadvantage is it often leads to less dramatic historical narratives. When you just talk about the lives of everyday people like us, it's not as exciting as when you talk about the lives of soldiers and presidents and kings. So often, when this is the theory of history you use, the books you write won't be as exciting as someone who writes about great men and leaders. Which theory of history do you prefer and why? All right, thank you for your time. In the next lesson, we will look at a reading that looks at the historians who started the great man theory and some of the historians who started the social theory of history.